This is the fourth and final book which I've got out for the Spotlight session on books from the special collections related to Byron. And I will admit that part of the reason why I've got this book out is just because it is absolutely beautiful. However, it's also quite interesting. The previous books that we've looked at were a book of Byron's actual works, a memoir of Byron written in the period just immediately after his death by someone who knew him, an example of the interest and research and, to a certain extent, shenanigans that went on with Byron's work and reputation in the period after his death. And this final one is another different type of book. This is a book which is a kind of overview, an introduction to Byron as a poet. Now, you can see that it's part of a series called Days with the Poets. This is the Byron version of that particular series. And it was written by M.C. Gillington. Now, M.C. Gillington is Mary Clarissa May Byron, who was born Gillington. So Mary Clarissa Gillington. She was born in 1861, and in 1892 she married George Frederick Byron. So George Frederick Byron was actually the grandson of the poet Byron's cousin. So the lady who wrote this book, together with the whole of the rest of the series, Days with the Poets, was actually related by marriage to Byron. So that's quite interesting. When she published books, she published them under a variety of names. So some of them she published under the name May Byron. Some of them she published under her maiden name, Gillington, like this one. And she also used a number of other pseudonyms. She is mostly known nowadays for creating the first abridgments of the Peter Pan books. So she adapted and abridged the books, J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan books, for children of different ages. And she was the first one to publish a work entitled Peter Pan and Mary, Peter Pan and Wendy, for instance. So that was M.C. Gillington. She published a whole series of these sorts of biographies. There were Days with the Great Composers, Days with the Great Authors, Days with the Poets, as you can see for this one here. They generally seem to have been quite well received, although they did sometimes cause some confusion because they're written as an account of a day in the life of the particular person that they are talking about. Now, obviously, they are entirely fanciful, although they seem to have been based on good research. For instance, a lot of what's written in this particular one seems to have been based on letters from Shelley, describing Byron's day-to-day routine when he was living in Italy. So, when he got up, what he did with his time, what he did with his friends in the afternoons, those kinds of things. So all of that is put into this book. And when I picked it up, I was expecting it to be a little bit silly, maybe a little bit overly fanciful, but actually it just uses the framework of a day in the life in order to introduce bits of the poetry and to give them some kind of context. So it's actually quite a good read. It's a very short little book and good to read. We don't know exactly when it was published, but from looking at the style of it, this really nice kind of Art Nouveau style, it's been estimated that it was probably published sometime between sort of 1910 and 1915, maybe even slightly, well, no, probably not slightly earlier, because I think some of the illustrations are dated 1910. So it will have been in the early 1910s that this was published. And you can see that it's clearly designed as something to be beautiful. It's designed as a book with an aesthetic as well as, rather than specifically a book with a good deal of detailed content. So the front cover is printed with gold ink, and the image is separate. It's on a separate piece of paper and pasted onto the front of the book. The whole of the style of the book is absolutely beautiful. There is a lot of this kind of Art Nouveau roses design, and this is also interspersed within the text. Find, and the design of the entire book is really very, very nice. Now, as well as the text and the descriptions and bits of the poems, there are also a number of colour plates which illustrate parts from the poems of Byron. So this is one stanza of She Walks in Beauty, which is then illustrated on the following page with this illustration. And this goes on throughout the book. There are 5 or 6 of these. The Prisoner of Chillon. And there he is. So this book is lovely. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's really well worth having a look at. This is The Maid of Athens on the back page as well as on the cover of the book. It doesn't say anywhere who the illustrator of these images was. It doesn't say who painted these beautiful illustrations to go with the book. They seem to, illustrations of a very similar type seem to appear in the other books in the series as well. They are all signed, just down here, with the date. But because of the reproduction, it's very, very difficult to try and read it. It looks like it may say Miguel, but it might not. It might say something completely different. And as I say, a few of them seem to have the date 1910. So that gives us an indication of around about when this book was created. And this book, just like the previous one, is part of the James Ward collection. So it indicates that James Ward, as well as being interested in Byron from an academic point of view and from a collector, a bibliophile's point of view, he also had this interest in the kind of more populist ways that the works of Byron were being presented. And this is a particularly beautiful example of that. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this. And next month I'm hoping to do a session looking at the James Ward collection, some more of the treasures from that particular collection. So I will hopefully see you then. Thank you very much. Bye.